Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 5 of E2E. Today, we're going to solve global poverty. I know that's a little bit of an ambitious goal, but luckily for us, I'm the only inhabitant of this world, so solving global poverty just means that I'm getting rich. Getting AE2 and power generation set up took a serious toll on our resources, so let's see how we can fix that. This pack has a lot of ways to generate passive resources, from sieves to mystical agriculture to even Botania's orchid flower. But all of those are a really big commitment, and today we're not going to do any of them. Instead, we're going down a darker path. A deeper, darker path. The Deep Dark is an extra utilities dimension that is pitch black, but it has a ton of ores. It's accessed with this portal, which has a lot of stuff that we haven't dealt with yet, like iridium, draconium, litherite, and a ludicrous amount of cobblestone. But lucky for us, it's a lot more doable than you're thinking. Killing the Ender Dragon gave us 6 draconium, so smelting it is all we need to do. Iridium ore can't be found naturally, but it does spawn in dungeon chests, and we're up to 6 pieces right here. And speaking of dungeon loot, check out this item I got. Oh yeah, litherite is much the same, but it's only found in one place, which is underground dragon layers. Even then, it's not at all common, so I had to go through a lot of dragons to get these 2 pieces. But since we have these, all that's missing now is the cobblestone, the 2.1 million cobblestone. Because we need such a crazy amount of cobblestone, and I'm not crazy enough to mine it all by hand, I've set up this little system here, which makes us 256 cobblestone per second, meaning that in just a couple hours, we should have our 2 million cobble. But having to wait a couple hours for our cobblestone is really not that bad, because once we get to the Deep Dark, we're gonna need a way to mine ores semi-automatically. Enter the RF Tools Builder. This thing is able to clear out huge areas, and although the card that lets you mine ores with it is heavily gated, we actually don't need it. Because what isn't gated is the card that lets you mine everything else. By making a void card and a filter for it, we can set it to mine everything that we don't want, like gravel, dirt, stone. After that, all we need to do is walk through and collect our ores. Of course, making the builder is easier said than done. This stuff is cheap, but the machine frame from RF Tools requires us to get into Industrial Foregoing. We're going to want some tree fluid extractors, super cheap, a latex processing unit, which we actually get as a quest reward. These guys I'm just going to set up here temporarily. The way they work is pretty simple. You put a log in front of a fluid extractor, and it collects latex. This can get extracted by some fluid conduits, and put into a latex processing unit. Beyond latex and energy, we need to give it a little bit of water, and it'll begin making tiny dry rubber. 9 of these give us regular dry rubber, shocking. This dry rubber gets used in the machine frame, in the range add-on, and in the item we'll need to get pink slime, the Mob Slaughter Factory. Huh, will you look at that? The Mob Slaughter Factory slaughters mobs, but more importantly, it gives us pink slime. And now, we have a bucket of pink slime that you apparently need to right-click to get. Good to know. If we place this slime down, we should soon see pink slime spawn. Here's our little guy. Now, let's hope we get lucky. Because we need these. Now I know what you might be thinking. 4 pink slime? Not exactly a lot. But if we put it in a compacting drawer, it gets turned into regular slime in its block form. So if we add regular slime blocks, we can now pull out as much pink slime as we need. We will be automating this properly later on, but for now, this should be plenty to get us started. The rest of the items aren't that bad, and we can go ahead and make a couple machine frames. This unlocks the RF Tools chapter, and after I craft a couple bricks, the RF Tools Builder. The shape card is cheap, and the void card is cheap. The filter module is easy, and in the time it's taken me to do this, we have our 4 sextuple compressed cobblestone. meaning that we can go ahead and make our deep dark portal. For now, I'm gonna put it in this scenic spot right here, and standing on it will now take us to the deep dark. We spawn in this beautiful cobblestone box, and because our flight works, we can actually just dig straight down and reach this absolutely massive cave. Another fun feature of this place is that if you stay in the dark for too long, you're gonna start to take damage. Now, while it's great that we can make it here in the first place, and that we have our builder, what we don't have is a way of powering this across dimensions. We're gonna make our goal to make power cells from RF tools. And of course, we're one prismarine short. Give me a second. That's a bit more like it. As I was saying, we can now make power cells from RF tools, as well as a power cell card, which we can use to link two power cells together. Now, if I hook a power cell up down here, it will begin accepting energy. A card can be put inside, and another one can be used to link the two together. If I teleport to a new location, put down the other power cell, and link it, you'll see that they're sharing power together, which means that we can take our power cell, head back to the deep dark, and if we set our builder down, put a power cell next to it, and link it, we can now start powering the builder. We give it a filter module, which has been set to whitelist the junk that we don't want. Then we can make a shape card. We can set the dimensions here, and if we put it in the builder, we should now be able to press this button and start it. Around here, all of the stone, cobblestone, and anything else is getting removed, while the ores stay. Now, as this thing works, I can't help but notice that the card says that the base cost is 0 RF per block, which means that this whole power cell thing may or may not have been useless. At least for this. It will be hugely useful around the base, don't worry. Also, I'm gonna be honest, doing this around a lake and a lava lake, not my best idea. But I think you see how it works. I'm gonna return here with food, a ton of torches, and I'm gonna be doing a lot of mining. With our mining trip complete, this is what we came out with. 2,700 iron, 600 aluminum, 800 diamonds. We are swimming in resources. Is it as efficient as a sieving setup? No, probably not, but it makes for way cooler time lapses. But now, it's time for a little bit of a change. It's gonna take a while for all of these ores to get processed down, so while I do that in the background, let's go do something that is the polar opposite of digging a giant hole in the landscape. Do you remember that big pyramid outside the immersive engineering room that I got rid of a couple episodes back? Let's go put that area to use. Is this not so much better? We have these beautiful waterfalls coming down, I prettied up the exterior. The goal here is to turn this place into a really nice outdoor farm. After all, if we look at our food book, there are still over 1,000 foods that I have not yet tried. I gotta step my game up. Went ahead and got some crops planted. This isn't efficient by any means, but sometimes it's just nice to sit back, relax, and farm a little bit. Now, back to your regularly scheduled progression. But maybe progression isn't the right word. I like to think of progression as a line, where you work on projects that act as a foundation for other mods later on. Yes, our line is growing, but it's not exactly wide. Look at RF Tools, whose machine frames are made with rubber from a setup that's in the middle of a walkway in the mechanism room. Does that seem like a sturdy foundation upon which to progress? No, the answer is no. So rather than advance forward, what I want to do now is take some time to consolidate the progress that we've made. This can take a lot of forms. It can be more tunnels for AE2 cabling. It can be bringing wireless power to immersive engineering. It can be actually setting up the industrial craft machines in their dedicated room rather than outside in the middle of a field. It can be processing our huge backlog of ores, or putting our new arc furnace to use. And finally, it's the ability to autocraft. It's setting up the recipes, the interfaces, to make sure that everything can be done on demand, all from our centralized storage. So as you saw, I've been making some solid progress, but I wanted to bring you guys back in real quick because it's time to make some new machines. As I've mentioned before, IC2 does its own thing regarding power, and in this pack, that's kind of annoying. If I wanted to deal with voltages and amps, I would just go and play a GregTech pack. To get around this limitation, we need to use the Mekanism Universal Cable, which require new items from extra utilities and actually additions. We're going to need both an atomic reconstructor and a resonator. The atomic reconstructor simply shoots out a laser, and if you throw items in front of it, and the laser hits them, they get converted into their actually additions equivalent. There's one for all of the main Minecraft materials. In this case, the Inori crystal was what we were looking for. The resonator, on the other hand, is very simple. If you have grid power, it'll use it and turn items into something new. In this case, iron bars become wireless heating coils. We will also need some special impregnated sticks from forestry, not a particularly bad recipe. With these, we can make the basic AA coil, 3 of them to be precise, then make this intermediate wiring, and combine it with some electrical steel to make our mechanism cables. We can't afford many right now, but you don't need many. And honestly, given how laggy mechanisms pipes tend to be, you don't want many. We can upgrade them to the highest tier, just in case, and place them in our industrial craft room. Now, all these machines have power, we can finish setting up our patterns for them. They might not look like much right now, but with enough of these overclocker upgrades, these machines actually become the fastest in the game by far. But now, let's switch gears a little bit, because I think it's time we find out why this episode is titled the way it is. Spoiler alert, it was not about the deep dark. You see, we can't really go on with AE2 living in this sad little box. We have to give it some breathing room. It is the heart of our base after all. So with our voiding card connected to the builder, we can select the first corner and draw our own box. If we come over here to the other end, you can see that I've already dug down quite a bit, and we can mark this as the second corner. Put this card in our builder, make sure our filter is set to whitelist, don't want to have it mine and void all of our ME stuff, and now we can start clearing out a little bit of room. Now, I will be the first to admit that this is not necessarily the single best base design I've ever seen, but right now we are painting in very broad strokes. With a little bit of time, I think you'll be impressed at what we can get out of this. This is looking a lot better already, isn't it? Now, I do want to temper some expectations. This is going to be a huge build, and it's not going to happen today. Realistically, we're just going to be sketching this out over the next couple episodes while we finish up the rest of the rooms that we have, and then move on to this one properly. But I'm really excited for it, and figured that we could start carving it out today, since the builder was already a pretty big part of this episode. For today's episode though, we have a few other things we want to do instead. The first of which is going to be automating the metallurgic infusers. These are the mechanism recipes that take both a catalyst here and an actual item to get infused. We can request the interfaces to stock whatever materials we want. For this first one, redstone, diamond, and obsidian for the third. This way, our patterns can just have the material that we want to infuse. The missing piece of this puzzle is how we automatically produce these compressed materials. That's where these 3 enrichment chambers come in. Over here, we do the same thing, but set them to instead receive the raw material, and then we make it so they only work with a redstone signal. Now we can put ME cable on top and give each one a level emitter. These little guys are the key to passive processes. We can set them so that they will only turn on when there is above a certain amount, in this case I'll say 64, of these in our system. Same exact story for the diamond, and same for the refined obsidian. One thing to note, however, is that to make compressed obsidian, you need refined obsidian, which comes from a metallurgic infuser itself. So we either set up another infuser specifically for this, or, in my case, we can just put a crafting card in the interface and tell it to stock this. Crafting cards are generally not a good thing, but this is a pretty simple recipe, so in this case, I think it's fine, and it helps us keep this symmetrical. Extremely important. Now, let's make some upgrades for them. And for good measure. And as you can see, as soon as we reach 64 of each of these, they stop and are just kept there in our system for when we need them. But now, it's time to move on to something else. Up here on the side of our building is a zombie. Okay, no more F5 for me. But up here is this little entranceway that never really went anywhere. It's not currently connected to the rest of the base, it doesn't have any staircases, it quite literally leads into the side of a mountain. So I thought it would be fun to turn this spot into a mob farm. All we need to do is clear some space out. This is the area that we'll be working with. It's a little 11 by 11 patch of dirt, which is going to get converted to cursed earth thanks to a drop of evil. And on the sides over here, we have a nice steep staircase down, where we'll be able to access all of the machinery that runs this farm, the principal of which is going to be the mob crusher from Industrial Foregoing. It's not a particularly expensive machine, and I've gone ahead and made another power cell for it. We're also going to want to give it a range add-on so it can cover the whole area. So let's place it here, and make sure that it can cover everything. All we should need to do now is collect the drops and make a storage system for them. Don't forget the void upgrades. What I've gone ahead and done is set the input into the drawers for a higher priority, in this case 5. Then I'm going to put a chest down here, which I can't open because I'm great at design. Then I'm going to put a chest down here. This I'm going to set to priority 2 and give it an item filter, which will be for the armor and tools that we want to keep. And anything else will go into this trash can, which has priority -5. This way, common drops will go in the drawers. The stuff that we want to keep and recycle in the arc furnace, like any terra steel gear, will go into this chest, and the rest into the trash can. We've gotten the room dark, let's use our drop of evil, and get out. All that's left to do now is to build around it and make it look nice. And doing that while there's mobs constantly spawning is a little bit tricky. I've gone ahead and built around it, and I've gone for a little bit of an arena kind of look here. Those are little spectator stands, and in the middle is where these mobs are trying to fight a mob crusher and losing horribly. The armor collection is going fine, pretty pleased with all the results. But there is one little issue with this build. Can you tell what it is? That's right, the issue is that it's absolutely terrible. I started this last night because I just wanted a little project to work on in the time I had, but this is such a boring design. Visually, it isn't particularly interesting, and the actual mechanics, cursed earth with a single machine, just magically doing all of the work, I'm not convinced. I'm not gonna tear it down now, because at the end of the day, it is functional, but I'm definitely going to put revamping this on our to-do list. All of our to-do list, however, will have to wait for the next episode. I know this episode was a little bit more light on building than most, but I have a lot planned for the next one, so don't worry. We did get quite a bit done this episode though. We found an interesting way of getting raw materials. We set up a boring but functional farm. We did some terraforming, which I definitely need practice with. And we've set up a lot of automation, which is going to be really handy going forward. As a quick side note, I set this contraption up at the start of the episode, and it took a few hours for it to make 4 of this sextuple compressed cobblestone. It's up to 48. I don't even want to know how many hours that is. Okay, now, thank you all very much for watching, and stay cool.